Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is our video number 2 for our new chapter. Do you have cell service? Have you thanked your cells lately? Have you said, cells, you're doing a great job. You're keeping me alive. You're giving me everything I need so I don't die. You should really thank them. Your cells are doing many services for you. And they're all working together. It's kind of a beautiful thing. You have all these cells working together, helping you be you. Go on with your good self. All right, problem number 1, 2, and 3. We're still focusing on these as we make our journey further into this new chapter. Problem number 1, we want to keep learning about proteins, what they do and why they're so important. We want to keep learning about what's happening inside our cells and what helps us survive, and what our cells do to help us survive. And we want to learn about different parts of tissue or groups of cells in our body called organs, heart, liver, lungs, brain, and what they do for us. And we also want to learn about these things like pollution, abiotic variables, pollution and other chemicals that impact our bodies and what they do to our cells. So let's keep moving along and see if we can't learn a little more about problem number 1, 2, or 3. All right, we last left off on slide 8, and it was membranes. We answered the question, so we're going to go on that. But since we learned a new definition for membranes, I need you to do me a favor. We need to go back to old slide 65. That's in our last chapter, our old slide 65. Where we wrote about carbohydrate, protein, and lipid molecules. So the chapter was, What Have I Become? So the slide 65 from our old notes, What Have I Become? And I want you to go and highlight the word cell membrane. You would find that in the lipid molecule section. So you drew a picture of a cell membrane, and you should have it listed. But go ahead and go back. Since we're learning about cell membrane now, go ahead and highlight that with a highlighter. Thank you. Because Ellie Mae said so. Here we got some lipids make our cell membranes. So lipids are a special type of polymer, and they manage what goes in and out of a cell. Lipids here on the outside so this is a cell that's been stained, and the lipids, the fat molecules, have been stained green. It coats the outside of the cell, stained green, so it shows up a little better. You can see the cell membrane of these cells. I can't remember what kind of cells these are, but you can see it's blue. So the cell membrane has been stained blue, so you can see the outside coating, or the membrane, the cell membrane of each of these cells. This is the nucleus, by the way. This is where its DNA is contained, and the DNA has been dyed or stained kind of a pinkish color. And then we have a beautiful stained cell here. These are brain cells. And these brain cells, or neurons, you can see their cell membrane, the coating of their body, and it's been stained a goldish color. Hi there. So we have 2 categories of cells that are found on Earth. Well, the 2 types of cells we'll discuss. And you have prokaryotic cells, fancy word. Prokaryotic cells include bacteria. And then you have a category of cells called eukaryotic. Eukaryotic cells and prokaryotic cells are different. They have certain things in common. They both are cells, of course. But their internal structure and the way that their cell is designed are different. Now, we should care about prokaryotic cells because we should be concerned about bacteria. Bacteria affect our lives. Sexually transmitted diseases, food-borne illness, bad food that makes you sick, etc. You should also care about bacteria because they offer a lot of foods that we enjoy eating, like yogurt. You can't have a lot of delicious foods without the help of prokaryotic cells. Now, we also have eukaryotic cells. Our cells are eukaryotic. Let's see, can you compare and contrast? Can you find something similar about them? And can you find something different about them? When you compare, you want to say use a word that shows how they're similar. And if we go back here, I'm going to zoom in. So use one of these words here. Any of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. use one of these 12 words here to compare and show how similar the two cells are. So find something that's similar about the cells and then use one of these words here to write a sentence. And you would write it right here on this line. But first, let's figure out what slide this is. All right, so for this comparison, it is going to be slide 13. So in your notebook, let's write slide 13, and we're comparing two types of cells, right? Prokaryotic, like bacteria, to eukaryotic, our cells, and even other organisms that are single-celled too. Now, we're multicellular, but we are made of cells called eukaryotic. All right, next we want to contrast or show how the two cells are different. So you must look at the two cells, prokaryotic, and look at the eukaryotic cell, and say one thing that's different about them. How are the two cells different? So choose a word out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11 choices here. Choose one of these words or phrases to say how they're different from each other. Choose one of these now. Or head to your page 38 in your notebook, and you can look at it there too. You also have the great transitions is glued into your notebook, of course. So if you have trouble seeing on the screen for comparing similarity or differences, you can get it in your notebook. Page 38, I believe, or around in that area of your notebook. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is slide 15. In your notebook, please write slide 15 and go ahead and pause the screen, and let's get the official definition for prokaryotic cells. It says they lack internal structures with membranes. So they don't have a lot of membranes or thin cased areas. They don't have a lot of little parts inside them that are contained in membranes. It says most are single-celled, so most things that are prokaryotic cells just live by themselves as a single cell, and they take care of themselves and they live in the environment. It says they can be a pathogen, which means sometimes prokaryotic cells can be infectious. They can cause infections. And it says prokaryotic cells lack a nucleus or membrane protection. So they don't have a nucleus or a membrane that coats their DNA. So these yellow squiggly lines is their DNA. They don't have a nucleus or a membrane that coats their DNA and protects it. All right, let's think about these questions. It says, where on campus do you think you'd encounter the biggest bacteria populations? Where on campus do you think you'd encounter or see the most bacteria? And so in your notebook for slide 15, so write your hypothesis. So after you get the definition for prokaryotic, let's do this hypothesis. It says, I think blank area at school would have the most bacteria, or what type of cell are bacteria, right? So go ahead and get it from the definition, prokaryotic. So where do you think on campus has the most bacteria or prokaryotic cells? Also, it says what personal item or product you own is most likely to have bacteria. Make another hypothesis for number 2. Number 2 hypothesis, I think my blank would have lots of what type of cells, right? And then just as an interesting note, we have some skin cells and a special bacteria on our skin called Staphylococcus epidermis. And they provide a line of defense for our bodies. We actually have a species of bacteria, at least one, that lives on the surface of our skin and protects us, just like our immune system. And look at this. It says we have roughly 1 pound. That doesn't sound right. I think we have even more. But we got pounds of bacteria that live in or on our body and that actually help us survive. So we actually live cooperatively with at least certain species of prokaryotic cells. They help us. They live on our skin or they live inside us and help us. And some, of course, can be harmful, some bacteria or some prokaryotic cells. Here we go. So yeah, according to the internet, it looks like we might have around 3 pounds of bacteria living in or on our body, helping us. Yum. All right, so let's compare really quickly prokaryotics to us and other organisms, eukaryotes. Okay, prokaryotes tend to be types of bacteria And in general, eukaryotes could be protists, which are single-celled little animals. They're very tiny. Microscopic species. We have fungus, which could be single-celled or multicellular, like a mushroom. Or it could be single-celled, like a yeast. And then you have plants and animals. All have eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotes are single-celled. They live by themselves as one cell. But eukaryotes can be single-celled or multicellular and make up our tissues and our organs, our parts of the body. Prokaryotes tend to be small, and eukaryotes tend to be large. And organelles. The organelles are the parts within the cell. Prokaryotes don't usually have lots of organelles because they don't have membranes inside themselves, coating different body parts. Eukaryotes have many membranes, many organelles that have specialized functions. So our cells have little compartments, little membranes inside that all do different jobs. Lots of different cell types can cause harm. You have certain protists or protozoa, certain types of eukaryotic cells that can poison us. They can be pathogens. Parasites, fungus. A lot of cells and a lot of single-celled organisms are pathogens and can harm us. Look at what it says about fungus. It says 30% of known fungal species are parasites or pathogens that can harm us. Some fungi attack food crops and are toxic to us. Animals are much less susceptible to parasite fungi than are plants, so we do a better job than plants at protecting ourselves from fungus that are pathogens or are harmful. So this brings us way back to our ecology chapters, where we learned a term called density-dependent variables. And that are variables that limit our survival when we live really close together. Because germs get spread, and parasites can get spread and cause die-off. And they're all caused by these single-celled organisms, these pathogens, different prokaryotes and eukaryotic cells that can cause disease to spread when we live really close together. And we're talking about this because we want to eventually study these cells. We want to, what's called, incubate them. We want to study areas on our campus that we think have lots of pathogens or disease-causing cells. And we want to find out what are safe places and dangerous places on our campus. Soon, we'll have a great, fantastic lab that allows us to think about those density-dependent factors. So, throughout our future chapters in cell biology, we'll practice with an incubator to grow single-celled pathogens. We'll use and learn to use petri dishes. We'll find out what agar is, which is inside these petri dishes, colored red here. And we're going to get a chance to make some more sense of our ecology and density-dependent factors or variables, those things that cause limiting survival, things that limit our survival, like pathogens, things that cause disease. So hopefully we'll grow some and find out where on our campus are the dangerous single-celled organisms. All right, this is slide 21. Slide 21. In your notebook, write slide 21. And let's write the official definition for eukaryotic cells, the kind of cells that make our bodies. Eukaryotic cells have lots of membranes that coat areas. So they have a lot of internal structures wrapped or contained by a membrane. Membranes being thin structures that coat stuff and separate regions. So there's a lot of areas separated from each other here. Lots of little sections separated by these thin membranes. All right, in your notebook, make a brainstorm web, just like you see here. It's in the center, we'll say parts of a cell. So take half a page and make this brainstorm web. And it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bubbles. See how many parts of a cell you remember from middle school science. So any parts of the cell that you remember, go ahead and place them in a bubble. If you can't fill in all 6, that's okay. But test yourself. Think about all the little internal parts, the parts that make the cell. How many do you remember? Fill in the bubbles. Let's see how well you do. All right, this is the last place we're going to leave off now. And I'll pick it back up for our third video. So until then, ask yourself what your cells are doing for you. Have a good day, guys.